Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast, episode 174. Steve Smith, along with Ivan Ozerets.
Hello, everybody.
And we're going to call Davey Anderson, oldie goldie, guy who's helping us big time with this, that, and the other thing, but definitely the podcast tonight. Dialing for Dave. North Dakota boy.
Hello.
Dave Anderson, Steve and Ivan, GreatBase Tennis Podcast. How are you tonight?
Good. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great. Thanks, Dave.
We got to talk about Ivan's t-shirt. Of course, I'm wearing a winter hat up here in winter green, snow on the ground. I know you're a North Dakota boy. You've survived some winters before, but he has a t-shirt. Why don't you explain that to us, Ivan? Made it yourself.
So it's a white t-shirt, and it's a picture of a pig, a cartoon pig, just his face, and the word "committed" on it. The saying goes, the chicken was involved, but the pig was committed. There we go.
Howard Schnellenberger, the late Howard Schnellenberger. The next time you have breakfast and you have bacon and eggs, remember the chicken was involved and the pig was committed.
Correct, yes.
I was one time in Japan and they don't even have bacon and eggs for breakfast. Hiro Yoshida loved it. I went back the second time and the staff, they were wearing t-shirts, and in the front was very similar to your shirt. It had a picture of a pig, and then on the back there's a picture of a chicken with a red circle and a line cut through it.
That's good.
We're going to have double duty. We're going to go through a quick podcast that's important for where we are. 174. Then we're going to take a 5-minute break and we'll get ahead with 175, which is the do's and don'ts of tennis teaching professionals.
Coaches, correct, yes.
But Ivan's been with us, Dave, our listeners, for a year and helping me out any which way. And certainly through many, tapes or handouts or printouts or podcasts or Instagrams or podcasts, whatever. He has put together a document. He's going to read a segment of it and we'll talk about it. We'll go on. So we'll call this one our commercial, promotional, business podcast. Get an F in all those areas. Go ahead.
All right. Thanks, everybody, listeners, Dave, Steve, for listening to this document. GreatBase Tennis Education, GBTE, an initiative based on sound character and solid fundamentals. Principled by Vic Braden scientific rationale, pillared by 8 educators, presented by Steve Smith and an international network, practiced by parents, players, coaches, and administrators, powered by ? And those who care deeply about tennis. Steve?
Yeah, well, powered by. Yeah, we could certainly use a chief sponsor. I know there's sponsors, but keep going.
Our mission: help the growth and welfare of tennis. Help make tennis instruction more competent. Help make tennis instruction more accessible and more affordable. Help make tennis instruction user-friendly through peer teaching. Help make tennis fun and understandable. Visit our website, greatbasetennis.com. Our vision: seeing kids teaching kids, seeing families and friends practicing anywhere and everywhere, seeing kids serve and volleying in doubles, seeing more Americans play American college tennis, seeing less ego and more education. GreatBase Tennis Education is a pathway that is fact-based for long-term development. It's a plan, a blueprint, a language. It's a comprehensive curriculum for occupational competency. It's a body of work based on 50 years of study and application, and it's a nonprofit project that provides free educational content.
Okay, Dave, any comments so far?
Yeah, everything that you just read, and the first thing is it's a shame it's just not a common thread between USTA, USBTA, USPTR, in terms of education and that's when we start talking about sponsorships, really like myself. I'm fortunate to have been involved with the information for quite a while now, going back 40-ish years. And the USPTA, I don't even know what my monthly dues are now. And but as a group of teaching pros coming together, it's in reality, I mean, the GreatBase provides way more of an education throughout the tennis industry than any other certification that's currently available. And, it really merits, in my opinion. We should just like put my credit card through to pay my annual dues for USPTA. I think the GreatBase is in a much more solid position to do that kind of thing. And if all of us that have been influenced by it started that trend, I think it would help solve a lot of it. I know that it takes away from the nonprofit. Well, not really the component somewhat, but I think that's a great starting point to unify, but also to monetize something that could help push the efforts forward. Because what is going on with it is not going on anywhere else in the world. You see all these Instagram sites, and it's buy this, buy that, and the information that you're putting out there from a lifetime of work, is well worth annual dues. But that's just my thoughts.
Well, we can continue. This is a long version. Certainly, a short version is I talk for 1 minute, show a young kid hitting balls, and talk for another minute. We have a visiting coach from Lithuania. We'll have him on as a guest. Very interesting background. Only 25. Just a very interesting background. But for him to be here, I'd say one thing is that it is a language. But then the history, where does the language come from? And it's, you think about our 8 pillars, and I think, certainly that's in the document that Yvonne's put together. But yeah, it's a language, and it's not something that you're going to learn in 5 minutes or a weekend. But Yvonne, why don't you continue? Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to add, as I read his document, you'll see where I'm coming from. It's more from experience. I'm every day I wake up grateful that I've found out about the information, what Steve has put together, and the network. I grew up, I love tennis. I still love tennis. And I just never had the information that I know now. And if I did, and now looking back, if we can provide a better service, a better project, a better, put more effort towards having more kids have a better start in tennis, it would be just so much better for the whole game. So with that, who can argue with a beginning player having a great base? A couple questions here. Who can argue with an entry-level coach having product knowledge? Who can argue with a parent having consumer knowledge for tennis? These are basic questions. Of course, the answer is yes, yes, yes. And it's unfortunate that the majority really don't. It's a no answer. Any comments on that, Steve?
Well, I think product knowledge. I've heard this said about, you go to a sports authority, and not to pick on sports authority, but a store where they're selling athletic equipment. And obviously the people listening love tennis. And just in loving sport in general, is that many times the person selling, it's 98% people skills and 2% product knowledge. So I do think, and I don't really like to say this, as a tennis teacher, you have to be able to do just that, teach, but there's also sell and organize. So the selling part, but the product knowledge, if there is a product, you should be able to produce it, and you should be able to look across the courts and see kids with a efficient service motion, and they can come to the net in doubles and play volleys. But where it really gets confusing is the parent is blindly writing checks, and the consumer, they have to be in it for a while. The consumer, I remember Dave Fish saying, consumer beware. Mm-hmm. I know, Dave, you had players play for Dave Fish.
Mm-hmm.
He's a retired coach from Harvard, but consumer knowledge is they're blindly writing checks. So the consumer has to be educated. In the triangle of junior tennis, most definitely the parent should be the boss, because they're the one writing the check. But yeah, why don't you continue, get through this?
Yes. So GBTE currently offers 15 plus years of daily Facebook posts, 500 plus Instagram videos, 500 plus YouTube videos, 150 plus podcasts, 5 educational courses, including Tennis Intelligence Applied, which is 25 hours long. Yeah. So if I knew, again, I'm going back to it because I'm still shocked that, I mean, both happy and sad when I found out about the information. If I knew all this content is there online and available for anybody.
It's like the late Braden said, is eliminate the guesswork. And it's Vandermeer used to say, well, you can make up for the lost money, but it's it's hard. You can't make up for lost time in many ways. It's just, and, and that's a business that Dave and I've been in for a long time, is someone comes to you and is like, oh, it's a redo. It's like, the parents, your child's tennis, the light at the end of the tunnel is a train coming right at them. Continue. Go ahead.
Steve, about you, you're the founder. He has a common name and an uncommon tennis background. He was born into a hockey family near the Canadian border in upstate New York. After 15 years in hockey, he has spent 50 in tennis. From a tennis point, he was a complete neophyte at 20. He initially lived the role of the starving artist by working nights, living in a van, and devoting endless hours to studying the game and becoming a respectable amateur player. By 25, he had earned a top 20 ranking in Florida. More importantly, within his first 5 years in tennis, he was trained by Welby Van Horn, Dennis Vandermeer, and Vic Braden. Soon after, luck was on his side because he was given the privilege of revising a general recreation curriculum into a comprehensive curriculum and college degree plan. His students were seeking occupational competency as tennis teaching pro managers. The unique program, the first of its kind in the world, attracted students from over 35 states and 25 countries. Dennis Vandermeer called the project the Harvard of tennis teaching. The GreatBase pathway was formulated in an academic setting in the 1980s. Lectures, labs, monthly seminars conducted by specialists, summer internships, and extra challenging projects were logged. A process to develop players and coaches was started and has been refined daily over decades. Steve has traveled to over 30 countries and worked for organizations, associations, federations, and companies, as well as universities. His diversified background and drive to help children entering the sport of tennis define his career. His life's work has been studying tennis masters and proven methodologies. To make an understatement, he and his students shine a bright light on tennis instruction by sharing information, ideas, and insights. If one studies the educational merit of GBTE, they will discover that the content is based on substance, not sizzle. They will realize science and logic pave a wave, and specific detailed rationale is presented with clarity. The massive body of work assembled proves that fundamentals do stand the test of time.
Go ahead, Dave. I love the fact that you mentioned van.
Yeah.
We have a podcast coming up on van life with someone I know who spent a lot of time living in a van playing tennis. What comes to your mind with that, Dave? The lab. You were part of that lab.
Yeah, I think there's, we talk about Steve's efforts there in regard to, you mentioned, Yvonne, about giving kids a pathway into the sport, and really it's just as much for a coach. And because not only do we have a pretty high attrition rate of kids entering the sport, they're out of the sport before they really even get up to their knees in the water. The attrition rate is equally as high for coaches. And so I think that it's a pretty deep topic, really, in my mind. What the mission is. I was literally just kind of trying to explain to somebody about 2 hours ago about what this all means, and it's kind of hard to sum up in a very short amount of time. But it's an educated approach to playing, teaching, coaching, parenting a player that in this day and time really shouldn't have to break the bank for some of these people. And, it, in its purest form, the GreatBase would, in my opinion, challenge an organization like the USTA and even have a tournament circuit. That would make sense. Developmental tournament circuits and where officials are roving the doubles courts and administering point penalties for not serving and volleying. And to me, that would be like, if you sit down and say, what does it look like in a perfect world? It's kind of all encompassing from my end anyways. That's how I try to sum it up to people.
Well, to hear the term 50, I also appreciate the hockey note that Yvonne wrote into this. We're 15 years in hockey. But anyway, with that, the young guy from Lithuania, you mentioned you were just talking to someone 2 hours ago. He's here to study tennis, and he's been sent here by a family, so it's a fun project. And, we film his technique, and he knows now, after just being here 4 days, 5 days at the most, wow, if he started late, started in Cork, Ireland, even though, he's Lithuanian, his family moved to Ireland, but, okay, refund, someone didn't tell you anything about fundamentals, it'd be like playing a piano with your hands facing the other way. But I told him today, I said, wouldn't it be great if there was tournaments, okay, you have 8 beginners, you just go to like we were at a major college campus a couple weeks ago. It's all right. There's 6 courts, and you each get 30 minutes, and you're each going to get 6 to 8 beginners, and we're going to watch you teach the serve, and then just make it competitive. But yeah, let's go ahead. Continue here.
Accomplishments. Steve often states that tennis is the credibility business, and that credibility means one is believable but not necessarily truthful. The following list of accomplishments were recorded when Steve was asked about his own credibility. Listed are a dozen points, and there are certainly dozens more. The results are based on development, not recruitment. GBTE is the largest junior program in the US. One just needs to add up the number of juniors being taught and trained under our curriculum. GBTE has trained tennis coaches who work all over the world. During the second 5 years of his 10-year stint, the lab setting that produced the GBTE curriculum produced more Texas champions from a sparsely populated area than Dallas and Houston combined. Collectively, GBTE coaches have produced literally thousands of college tennis players. Name a college, and most likely a student of Steve's has either played or coached at that college. Steve Smith's students have won both the boys and girls national 18 singles champions in the US, and his students have done the same. Austin Krajicek, who started with GBTE instruction, earned the #1 doubles ranking in the world. Raven Klaassen reached the Wimbledon final. Craig Tiley, who was under Steve's tutelage for 7 years, took the University of Illinois from obscurity to a national team championship. Chad Berryhill, who has won 2 national team titles, 1 in junior college and 1 in Division II. Jeremy Wertzman, Julie Scott, and Ryler DeHart all won individual college titles at the D1 level. Steve's son, Connor, in juniors was ranked #2 in the U.S. in the 18s. In college, was an All-American, and in the pros was 200 ATP. Steve Denton, who was #2 in the world in doubles and a number 11 in singles, hired Steve once he entered the coaching profession.
Yeah, let's stop there. Dave, why don't you talk about credibility? I mean, you've developed so many tennis players. Credibility doesn't represent truthfulness, just means you're really believable.
Yeah, I mean, credentials are man-given. Kind of credentials, credibility. And I think it's not always accurate, for sure, to say the least. I mean, all of those stories right there, we could almost do a podcast on every single one of those stories. And you have had several of for instance, Krajicek, who you were so influential with. And, but I think that the junior tennis world, for sure, is monkey see, monkey do. And, you know, we try to do monkey see, monkey do in regard to peer teaching a lot. I mean, but they just, whatever parents witness at a tournament. I mean, I always know when a kid for the first time goes off to a tournament outside of the Texas borders, and they're traveling to one of the coasts, either California or Florida, they're going to come back and they're going to have seen something that's going to knock them off the track a little bit. And, because, you know, we're in a society where it's just win, and it's not always apples to apples. I mean, there's so many factors, genetics, whatever, but I mean, that's a short list of, I mean, that's a short list of your stories. But I think that the people that have been positively influenced, especially the ones that have achieved something as players, I think they need to really be, they are key in helping to spread the word of it, because, you know, as I hire pros, we have 24 now. There were 2 when I got here. The player who comes in that just played at Florida State, they have instant street cred, and immediately, you know, the top players gravitate towards them. But, you know, bringing in somebody who's a seasoned teacher with a great background and really educated, they may not have really accomplished much as a player, but they have to work a lot harder to get that credibility. And so I think the players that have been influenced by the GreatBase, they can play a pretty strong role in getting, you know, the respect and credibility out in the public that it deserves.
No, it's good. Why don't you continue, Ivan?
Yeah, well
Thanks.
said, Dave. Video documentation. GBTE is a system of systems. One of the most powerful systems of GBTE is the video documentation that Steve started in the 80s. Unless one is a complete beginner, Steve makes video analysis a prerequisite. The beginning of the journey with GBTE is to have one's essential strokes filmed from 3 angles. Then a take-home personalized training tape is produced. Technical training is next. In a matter of a few days, a second filming, a post video, reveals dramatic improvement. Steve's library of post videos shows results at every level of the game, from national junior titles to #1 college rankings to a Wimbledon title.
Wimbledon title. I know, Dave, you were there when Albin Marariu. What comes to your mind when you think of Albin Marariu?
I liked him. I think he was a very good guy. The father of Karina Marariu, who was obviously been a world-class player, accomplished a lot more in doubles and singles, but she was great at all of them. And I think it was a guy who had a plan and wasn't going to get involved in the mess. He was, I guess, somewhat similar to Richard Williams, in that he was just kind of bypassing the typical drama and the mess of junior tennis, and she was, you know, slow cooking it, so to speak. And I mean, I vividly remember, I can't remember Andrew, I believe, was the guy she used to come out with, and he'd bring her out, and, you know, you did some filming on her. I was primarily just hitting balls with her, and she seemed to be very calm. And you know, I think that the dad probably was calculated in a good way behind the scenes.
Well, Yvonne spent a lot of time with her content. There's a clip on Tennis Intelligence Applied all the way to Wimbledon, and Karina Marariu won doubles. I remember what a program she had. Colin Dibley, who was a police officer and buddies with Rod Laver back in Australia. And Rod Laver said, Colin, you should try the tour. And he had a very successful career. Once a week, for an hour, 45 minutes, he would serve to Karina. Then Albin said, you can do whatever you want the last 15 minutes. But the coach who brought her out, I used to have some fun. Andrew, I used to just say very quickly, Andrew, son of a bitch. And he would laugh, and I would introduce him to people because his last name was difficult to pronounce. But anyway, all I was doing on CompuTennis was charting her twice a week. And then I finally convinced Albin, I said, hey, your daughter doesn't need to see it. Andrew doesn't need to see it. Let me just show you a couple of things. And one was the backhand. She had a reset backhand. She took the racket low, high, low, but she had a very good backhand with the grip and the swing. And he's a brain surgeon. I remember seeing him at like PTR, USPTA conventions. He was also studying the game. But for our listeners, she only played 2 national tournaments. And he was famous within junior circles at that time saying, no one really cares who wins a weekend tournament in Miami.
Mhm.
But when I finally got him in the room, she was scheduled to go to Europe. And I said, she takes the racket low twice on the backhand. That's why she has to stay so far behind the baseline. I said, it's not wrong. Borg did it, but Borg was behind the baseline and Macro came up with that lefty serve and it was a liability. And I just remember he slammed his keys on the desk and said, we're changing it. And he went outside and he said, Andrew, Karina, you're not going to Europe tomorrow. You're staying here and changing your backhand. But I saw that number 1 rankings in college tennis there's people I've worked with. I don't really say, okay, I mean, I developed this player, but I did work with them and they made these changes and they became number 1. But some of the players that were mentioned earlier, those are the ones that really, really started at a young age, that, the developmental side. I've heard you refer to it as the dirty work. But national junior titles, it shouldn't be an elevator ride. It shouldn't be someone who meets you at the airport and, by the time you leave the terminal, you're driving off the airport property and they're calling you coach. But let's go next on peer teaching. Go ahead.
Peer teaching. Perhaps the best way to evaluate and judge the GreatBase curriculum is to watch kids teaching kids. There's something magical and moving about watching a younger player helping an older player. The ECD, Early Childhood Development sector, is the best group for GreatBase to target. Only a small percentage of tennis teachers are focused on teaching young children solid basics. And with any endeavor, there's no substitute for a good beginning.
Go ahead, Dave.
Well, I mean, it's the typical tennis scenario in early childhood and teaching the tiny tots and whatever people do call it, that they hire 16, 17, 18-year-olds to kind of hang out there, and maybe they have one more senior person, but I think that's something wrong with the profession overall. We are very fortunate here. Mary Poe, who you've met, Steve, she's been instrumental here, leading it for 15 years. I mean, I'm watching what she's doing each Tuesday and Thursday with my grandchildren out there in a group lesson. And, she deserves a badge of honor. As far as credentials, she, like many people in that realm that are doing a lot of that, to me, they're heroes. I mean, they are getting people started in the game, giving them a good chance to get the right fundamentals, and they're making grip adjustments and things like that. And it's critical. It's critical. I mean, tennis is tough. Tennis is tough. The best instruction needs to happen early on, and a lot of great instructors need to be doing that role as well. I mean, the more you understand it, you realize it's really no different than working with a national level junior that comes in to see you but has a problem. I mean, it's the same teaching. I mean, skills are skills. It's just elite level players are just, they're the same fundamentals and they've just honed them to a different level, but it's still a backhand volley. And it's just been repped out and honed to a level that has bred an elite level. And things don't change. They just don't change level to level like people think. It's what you can and cannot do with whatever it is you're working with.
No, I think the way you said that's perfect. Mary, coaches like that are heroes. I know you're going to cover that in the do's and don'ts of teaching professionals, but so many people, they want to coach the kid who can already play. Yvonne, go ahead. Pillars. Add some comment though. Go ahead.
Yeah, one comment is, I often hear you say this, the greatest form of retention for learning is to teach. And just some experiences as I wrote this, peer teaching aspect is it's so important. It's unbelievably important. I started with the information quite late at 21. And as a more advanced, tennis player, I could understand and consume the information more quickly. I can spend more time on it. It was really important to me. So I was around kids that were asking me questions, and I would be happy to answer because I was learning alongside them. And it's amazing. The teacher learns more than the students. I would, the more I repeat it, the more I would know, the more I would reinforce in my own mind. And peer teaching is such a cornerstone of not just GBTE, but in general, just learning and tennis. I think it should be in general as well. But here, this next paragraph is about the pillars. So below are 8 tennis leaders of GBTE. Their contributions are the cornerstones of GBTE curriculum. Please note, GBTE is not a closed study. Over 100 coaches are mentioned in the Tennis Intelligence Applied course, and Steve and his associates stay current with information being distributed through numerous platforms and venues. We have Vic Braden, Science and Logic; Peter Burwash, Service and Creativity; Harry Hopman, Fitness and Character; Bill Jacobson, Statistics and Match Analysis; Jim Lair, Mental and Emotional Training; Welby Van Horn, Balance and Basics; Dennis Vandermeer, Progressions and Group Dynamics; Jim Verdick, Team Building and Passion. 3 of the 8 pillars have been inducted into the International Tennis Hall of Fame. According to Steve, the others should be. In 2023, a group of Steve's former students announced that their pledge for Steve's nomination as a member of the International Tennis Hall of Fame has been filed and accepted. Besides stating his appreciation, Steve stated that the curriculum he has assembled, not him as an individual, should be accepted. Over the next 10 years, GBTE should prove to be one of the best guardians of the game of tennis.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, all of those guys all those people that you mentioned, the pillars. I mean, it's scary and it's kind of sad to think of how the generations that are going through the sport right now know so little about the history of the game in general, let alone how few of the people coaching the sport really have been impacted or not been impacted, but how much awareness they have of these and others that have really paved the way in the coaching for tennis teachers, tennis coaches. And I think paying tribute to it is so important. And that's what I always loved about Roger Federer. I mean, he was so in touch with the history of the game, and he was so respectful of the history of the game. And I think that we are fighting a society that, it's, we use the word sizzle versus substance, and it has to be sexy sizzle. I mean, it has to really, really, really be something now to grab people's attention. But these guys are brilliant, and undoubtedly the key thing out of all of that is how GreatBase and the initiative of what it's trying to do, being a guardian of the game of tennis, because the game of tennis is under attack right now from other racket sports, et cetera. And we have a responsibility to grow it. And we can't just continue along as we have and expect something to change. I mean, nothing will change till something changes. And I really, really believe that, I mean, it could evolve into, I mean, I don't want to cause any problems for anybody, but it could evolve into a rival organization for all of those acronyms or all those names that I threw out: USTA, USPTA, PTR. It could work in harmony with them too, but it has a better core interest. It's the interest of the game, I believe. If people really look at what's wrong with tennis, the GreatBase it has a lot of solutions for it. So,
money. Who has to go? Money's the root of all evil. I think it's great that people are finding a way to exercise through pickleball. But the USPTA and the PTR, I've been a member a long, long time. I know you have, and it just doesn't make sense to me that overnight both organizations became pickleball organizations. And
Yeah.
I remember Chuck Gill, I talked to him briefly at the US Open one year, and he said pickleball, they should leave it alone and let it just remain a casual sport. Again, that's just one comment in general, but with pickleball, fair enough, but how can overnight these governing bodies of tennis become a pickleball organization? And I mean, convince me otherwise. And I do know, okay, the pros have to make a living. And I know pros here at the resort where they do both pickleball lessons and tennis lessons. I get that. But with, even the former players that are, we were at a Challenger not too long ago and covered it in a podcast. And I just some players have jumped ship and they're playing pickleball. And what about the guardians of the game? Is it what's this doing for tennis? I like the phrase "pickleball is invading tennis facilities."
Yeah,
I mean it's here to stay. I was just saying it's definitely here to stay, and we have to be aware that there's a lot of work to do. Those of us that are in the tennis industry, I mean, we have a lot of work to do, and it's. I think the GreatBase has solutions. Go ahead.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to my mind all the time with pickleball is, hey, don't make it up, don't wing it, don't go out there like you're an expert in pickleball. You just transferred from tennis, you just started playing. I mean, don't be a con artist. I mean, W.C. Fields, sucker's born every minute. But people that are playing pickleball, there are some differences. That what should happen is you're going to teach tennis strokes using bigger body parts. So there's prevention of injury. I do hear some things where it makes me chuckle that tennis and ping pong had a baby. It's called pickleball. But go ahead, Ivan.
One thing to add is with the pillars in the history, if you don't know the history of the game, you don't really know your sport. Let me say that again. If you don't know the history of your sport, you don't really know your sport. Being around you, Steve, I've heard you say that a lot. And the deeper you dive into the history, really, the greater the appreciation you have for the information and really the sport itself. So I wanted to add that. With USPTA and PTR, Steve has been a member of both organizations for over 40 years. He also served as a tester for both organizations. The academic program he led in the 80s broke records for most new members tested. He highly recommends that aspiring tennis teaching professionals join both organizations, especially those residing in the US. He also recommends that each member at least supplement their instructional programs by studying GBTE content. He justifies his statement because neither the PTR nor USPTA delivers the combination of Braden, Vandermeer, and Van Horn.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt going back to something that was said in regard to the pillars, that kind of ties in with that, is this isn't like it's a static project either. I always refer to being around, luckily in the 80s when you were running the program, and but it's not like it's just been static. It's not. I mean, the core principles, the science, the logic, some of these things, they're never going to change. I mean, when my grandkids are my age, they're going to be still relevant, still pertinent, and still critical to athletic development in this sport. But I think that it's important that listeners realize, nobody really has a more open mind than you in regard to receiving knowledge and ideas and information. And that's really how this all came about. This is how this has all come about. And it's not like it is only tied into those people and has remained static. It's been a constant, I think you use the word revision or, things. We're always looking for ways to improve. I mean, it's about continuous improvement but the fundamental parts of it, I mean, they are what they are. As long as if I threw my Mountain Dew can, well, I don't ginger ale now, but if I threw it up in the air and it's coming down, I mean, that's really what we're basing it on: physical laws, science, and some people struggle to I think accept that. That this isn't about opinion. This isn't what Steve Smith thinks or the GreatBase or whatever. It's just physical laws.
Oh, that's well put. Thanks. I like what Yvonne wrote. Certainly, there was that lab in the 1980s, but refined daily for decades.
Yeah, that was what it was.
Yeah. So when he wrote that, it's so true. Is that knowledge is great, then the application of knowledge is greater. But I like the expression that you can't imitate before you innovate, and that's where the website, or I should say www, the internet. It's a crisis that everybody's an expert, and I've said for years now it makes no sense for everybody to put up their 2 cents. And overnight, this coach visiting from Lithuania, I said, "Yeah, this is how it works. I mean, why are we a nonprofit? Well, lots of reasons. Certainly don't want to be someone who says, I have 7 secrets on the serve. The secret is there are no secrets. But here are 4 of them. If you want the other 3, give me your credit card and we'll send them to you by midnight." And it's like, come on. I do think that, people should be paid for their time and coaches should be paid. But I have a problem with, people, well, I'm not going to even get step on the court. And, somebody who lives 1,000 miles away, they're going to send me a fee for doing a remote video voiceover versus, what about the kid that lives right across the street? What about the people in your neighborhood? Become a pillar in your community. Yvonne?
Yes, to add, Dave, you said it well. As long as the tennis court stays the same and the physical laws of the universe don't change, the facts are going to stay the facts. And again, I keep coming back to this, but I wish I knew. GBTE board members. The minimum number of names was submitted for application purposes. Candidates with skill, influence, and expertise need to be asked to serve as GBTE board members. Steve, what are your thoughts on board members?
Well, with like today, we have this coach from Lithuania. It's kind of a light week for us. We have a young girl from Canada here with her parents. We've worked with many times. But for us, the way we work is if we have, Yvonne knows as well, if we have 2 or we have 22, it's the same thing because we do immersion. That's just how we do it. We're okay. We'll meet and it's not a private lesson. We do video work. We do classroom work. So no, we need to circle back and, I think that you've wrote this somewhere in this, maybe it hasn't been read yet, that how's it go? My strength is my weakness is that, we're not really, Yvonne and I are doing this, that, and the other thing, and we're making some progress, but we need help in managing the GreatBase. And that's where we need to raise a few dollars, not anything. I think that you also wrote in this, I read this exorbitant, but I want to keep reading. Go ahead.
Yeah. GBTE volunteers. Supporters need to donate time to provide services for GBTE. The workforce needs to be led by a full-time paid staff member.
Yeah. One thought on that is that the network is in place. Say if we're at podcast 174, we haven't done show notes. We haven't taken, people are busy. We haven't taken little excerpts from these podcasts and put them on Instagram. And, we have a pretty good idea that what we're not doing. Mm-hmm. Tennis Intelligence Applied went up, I think 17, 18 years ago. And everybody knows that I am not a technological expert, but I've been around a lot of discussions on internet education. And but there's so many things that volunteers can do, but we need to have a little larger in-house workforce to get things accomplished. Why don't you continue?
Yes. GreatBase support staff. Most importantly, funds need to be raised. So you just mentioned that, Steve. We'll get into the numbers here. I have a section on that. GreatBase faculty. Ideally, enough funds could be raised to pay a few individuals to serve part-time roles. For example, Steve has discussed this matter with Dave, Andy Fitzel, Raven Clausen, and Matt Clore. Needless to say, there are many, many other worthy candidates. GBTE already has a powerful team in place.
Yeah, one comment on that. Say with Raven, he just retired. He was on as a guest a second time, and our listeners just have to go back and go through that podcast. With everyone's busy, but organization, say for example, the course Tennis Intelligence Applied, to just have some new segments of that reproduced, for brevity and clarity, with just having a greater reach. But I like how it does mention, because I talked to you and Andy, Raven, and Matt about this, but there's many, many other worthy candidates. We already have this powerful team in place. We have people but everybody's busy. Everybody gets up, and I think that's also great that people are busy and they're taking care of the students that are right in front of them. I do think that most of us would agree that, okay, we're doing A, but there's B that I would like to do. We get so busy, especially people, that are married with children. I told this young coach visiting today, he's freelancing and he's traveling all over the world doing these different projects. But, once someone settles down, it's a different deal. But any comments, Dave, on the powerful team?
Yeah, there's a network out there that's unbelievable. And players, coaches. On a smaller scale, that's almost like when I listen to this, it's describing my life here. I feel like a full-time, well-paid administrator would be the greatest gift in the world that could land in my life. And but on a much bigger scale for the GreatBase, there needs to be the resources that are generated somehow to be able to, like you said, make things relevant. It's like that book that we have, that manual that we have, that training manual. A parent took it. I think one of the kids took it and mailed it to you, Steve, recently, the revision. But a parent just said, hey, your old one has words like VHS in it. And so I said that, I know. I said, but I don't know what to do. And, and we need new pictures and things like that. And so, yeah, keeping things sharp and crisp, but it just doesn't happen without strong administration. And we need legs and backs. That's really what most great tennis operations need: legs and backs.
With even people wanting to volunteer time and having that organized with a directory, and then also too is that the GreatBase, I think say a current crop of parents today, they would get it if it was explained to them. This goes back decades. There's so many people that have been involved. So many lives have been touched. But this latter part that you put together, Yvonne, is more about the business part. Why don't you continue?
Yes. Here, this next part about GBTE fundraising. So GBTE has not generated any funds for services or goods. GBTE became a 501c3, a tax-exempt organization, in September of 2022. And through the first 3 quarters of 2023, $4,471 was raised. GBTE has functioned on Steve's income and efforts. Fellow coworkers have also contributed their efforts. GBTE aspires to be a tennis organization that truly helps people in tennis. A goal of having a roster of 1,000 supporters donating $10 a month was launched. The goal would generate $120,000 per year. Thus far, the number of roster supporters is 28. The number does not reflect the size of our current reach and certainly indicates the need to focus on fundraising. GBTE also needs a chief sponsor, one who would even consider supporting our cause as a pilot project to allow us to further prove our worthiness and the positive impact that would certainly unfold.
One thing comes to my mind, and I know it could be done for less money, but I paid $12,000 to have GreatBase Tennis Education become a nonprofit. And the lawyer, Jane Callahan, said, I don't really think you should do this. And she knew my age and such. And she said, you should just sell the content. She said, it's going to take so much effort to raise money to have it be a fundraiser. And it really comes back to my time, so much time, decades with Vic Braden. There needs to be a plan, and the torch needs to be continued. You know, these pillars from the past, really the GreatBase in one compound word, it's homework. With the number 28, I think if you gave me 28 minutes, I could name 280 people that are making six figures a year that I train to teach tennis. So, but I always stated, Yvonne, okay, my fault first. It's, we're working together doing things. Okay, my fault first. And, we, I should use the pronoun I really haven't focused on fundraising, but we need to. We need to. Why don't you continue, Yvonne?
Of course. GBTE currently. Steve pays one coworker $48,000 annually. He also covers room and board as well as miscellaneous fees. Steve also covers costs for equipment, operating fees, and any additional expenses. Of the $10,432 raised in all of 2023, 4,430 of them have been spent. From a financial standpoint, GBTE is at ground level zero.
We have to mention that Yvonne is coworker at $48,000 a year.
That is me.
I think it works out to about $1.18 an hour, so he's a little overpaid. But why don't you keep going?
Steve's strength is his weakness. He continues to teach full time and has little time for off-court work. As at the time of writing this, Steve has 17 personalized videos to produce, and this is on top of his day-to-day teaching.
Okay, next one is painting a picture. This should be interesting.
Yeah, I heard you tell a story one time, and you helped me with this beginning part here. To describe the current status of GBTE, Steve describes this story. A person walks into an accountant's office with a shoebox of papers. There are at least 50 pieces of paper. Each paper has one word or one phrase written on it. Each word or phrase represents a key component of GBTE. The list goes something like this: history, established network, art, science, experience, results, facts, proof, cause, affordability, accessibility, wholesomeness, humility, trust, knowledge, packaging, delivery, accountability, filming, editing, producing, respect, and much, much more. The accountant seeks help. A team is unified, and GBTE becomes streamlined and efficient. Tennis and tennis people are helped, especially young children. Thank you.
With speaking of money, first year the course went up. Tennis Intelligence Applied made $50,000, give or take. No marketing, it was just put up. Second, third year, $25,000 each, so it made $100,000. Then I was a guest of a tennis parent, and I went to a course put on by the Shark Tank.
Yeah, Shark Tank.
And they asked me about my internet business. And I said, well, I had a course up. I still have it up, but now it's up for free. And the gentleman running the course said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. But with that, I really believe that tennis has become a money grab. I think every tennis teacher, it's like, okay, what are you individually? We can all throw shots at, say, the USTA. I mean, there are a lot of great people, a lot of great causes, great efforts, and okay, let's beat up the USTA. But when people start doing that, I'd like to say, okay, what are you doing individually? What are you doing? There should be a way. When I went to this boarding school in New Hampshire, the biggest crime was plagiarism. We would sit in the room at the beginning of every year, and I mean, I think there was a drug problem on campus for sure. I don't think I know, but it was you would be kicked out of school if there was plagiarism. And, I just think that giving credit where credit's due, education is sharing. And I think there's, Yvonne wrote this in one I saw where it was tennis needs less ego and more education. But go ahead, Dave, any comments?
Well, I mean, yeah, I've certainly taken a few shots at the USTA. I'm guilty.
I took some today.
But,
better yet, I heard some today. But you and I have for years worked with players who have been cherry picked. With I just think I think that there's a huge opportunity if we could get some of the governing bodies and some of the teaching organizations to utilize the content, because we have to grow the game of tennis and we have to solidify that. I mean, really quick here. I'm such a gut instinct person, Steve, you know that, my brain type. And I feel that the game of tennis needs immediate help. And if we don't get it, that, the next generations, it may not happen in our lifetime, but the future generations in the sport aren't going to know the sport as we know it. And so I think it's the GreatBase offers a solution for all that. I think what Yvonne wrote, going back to page 1, growth and welfare of tennis. My brother wrote 10 hockey books. I give him a hard time. He didn't dedicate the first one to anyone. And the second one dedicated, I think, to our grandfather for buying him his first pair of hockey gloves. And I think the third book was dedicated to my father. It gets emotional just saying is that he understood the true meaning of youth hockey, which is participation. These guys and gals, mostly guys that are at weekend tournaments, and they're the merchant of flesh, and it's recruitment. And, people follow these podcasts. We need more first base coaches, making tennis instruction more competent. You could totally wing it, but whether it was having 3 older brothers or coming from ice hockey, I wasn't going to get into tennis and just start teaching tennis. That paying the dues. I know we're going to address that with the tennis teachers here in a minute. We'll start another segment, but the money grab, having kids teach kids. Certainly, going down where he has this vision, more American players. He's heard me say that time after time. More American kids. I'm all for foreign players coming over because it lifts the level of play, but to have more American kids playing American college tennis. Really, I really like college tennis, but in a lot of ways, the players are, especially now with, I know I labeled it the wrong way the other day. NIL, what's that called? The names, image, and
NIL,
likeness. I said licensing, but our fact checker Andres Barbosa helped me with that. But in college tennis, there's something really disturbing about an 18-year-old going on their 5 visits, and the coaches are laying it out what they're going to give them and how nice these facilities are, and they're buying their players. That's recruiting. That we really need a shot. In all fairness to college tennis, okay, I'm okay with that, but these academies where they have the backroom deal. Obviously there needs to be pre-academies. Most people there's no reason for people to go to academies. And so people are looking at tennis and they're just getting priced out of it. Like how much it costs to play tournaments. I mean, so many things have been said on this podcast where parents, they should boycott tennis, and the parents would say, okay, we're just going to have our own circuit. But then one gentleman said to me, well, some parents would like that because the tournaments would be weaker, and then their kid would win the 2-inch trophy. With John Embry, he's retired now, lifetime in tennis. He was with the USPTA, nice man. I didn't know him very well, but I flew to Florida to meet with him. It wasn't when I was living in Florida at the time. I was doing a project with Tennis Memphis. And I said, Mark Twain, if there's 15,000 members of the USBTA, I can learn from each and every one of them. But I said, here are 3 points that not too many people within the whole organization, it would be some Bradenisms, like say, 19.1 degrees, or spin the racket 8 times. And every time you change your racket by 1 bevel, it's 45 degrees. And you go on and on with, those, fact-based pearls. And at that time, I said, well, I'd like to have a annual at the national campus, have an annual Vic Braden course, and any of the monies could go to his widow, Melody. And what he said, well, why don't you present that to the board? Then right after that, the pandemic happened, and everyone gets so busy. But I really think, as far as control the controllables, is that we really don't need to raise a significant amount of money, but we need to be able to do that on our own accord. Because then what happened is they came back and said, well, we'd have to do that for everybody. And, in all fairness to Vic Braden, and John Imram, he like most people, he didn't know Vic Braden tennis, but he knew Vic Braden, the man, and he knew Melody. So, really, really nice guy. But I'm not putting words in his mouth. Vic Braden's not everybody. And it's, but it's the information. It's like Braden said, Newton and Galileo were here before us. With, I just think you have one more paragraph to read, and then we'll be done with this.
Yeah, one more thing to end off my document here. If you read thus far, you certainly care about tennis and realize GBTE is far more than Steve Smith's stuff. Please consider donating $10 monthly to GBTE. Actually, any amount will help. Just go to www.greatbasetennis.com and push the donate button. Please tell your tennis friends about our free content. Please help GBTE find a chief sponsor. The money needed is not exorbitant. Again, thank you for your time.
Closing comments, guys, we can wrap it up.
Dave, any closing comments?
Well, I think if all of us that benefited from it, $10 a month, that's just not much to most of us. And I think just, to do it all at once or do it once a month, if you're like me, you forget to do things sometimes. And, it's just a matter of doing the right thing, really, for all of us that have been influenced by it in any way. And, we all need to, initially, everybody that's inside of the circle of influence already, I think we all need to step up and go from there and hopefully ripple outward. And, I know that it'll be just a matter of time until there is sponsorship of some sort and the proper administration, is able to be there. Yvonne, I feel your pain. 48K. Tylee and I work for $750 a month.
You were overpaid, huh?
Yeah. Similar. I think I was actually not even supposed to be on staff. I'm not sure I had my degree completed, but anyways, it all worked out. I had to go back and take a CPR course or something. But anyways, yeah. So, it's a great cause, and it's a cause that can help a lot of kids. And I hope that some people that are listening to this can find a way to make it happen in their world. And if we just keep rippling outward, I think that's the key.
I think with the story on the degree is, I was not one to be light, because we were considered at this 2-year curriculum for tennis teachers underwater basket weaving, like this is going to be easy. And so I went out of my way to make it difficult. So with I wasn't letting people substitute a course or take it I had the power of the pen, and someone transferred a credit in, and it's like, could this substitute for that? So the way it worked out with Dave is that he had to come back another semester. And I was just thinking, the longer they were there, the better. And, I was in a position, the job placement was like way up, close to 100%. And so I remember Mike Carter has been a guest, and he's a good friend of Dave's and mine. And he had to go home because of his father's death, and spend time with his mother, and so he had to leave in the middle of a semester. So I was allowed to have, because Carter was doing many things, but one was teaching stringing. I think we had 6, 8, tabletop stringers, and trying to teach 100 people to string. Used to buy that way back when 500 wooden rackets. It was great for the PE classes and just teaching people how to string, because that's so important as far as an entry level job. So short story long, long story short, I've got the person who came into string, he had not completed the program. He had to at least have an associate degree to be a lab instructor. And that's what they were paid, peanuts, $750 a semester. And anyway, I knew I was going to get reprimanded, but I knew that the person I was working for at that time would not read the application. So David hadn't completed the degree, but I just knew, it really goes back to your upbringing in North Dakota, your parents, is that when he came in, obviously he had the personality to coach and the voice, and, very young guy, obviously, but just was there to get the information. But yeah, I remember that. But those that were there who got a chance to work in the program, they just knew the longer the better. And that's people just aren't really prepared. But 1,000 people, I know some people be laughing at that. We have 28 people that have signed up. Some people have donated some money.
Yeah. One-time donations have, I don't have the number in front of me, but I'd say every 5th one is a reoccurring donation monthly. The other 4 would be just one-time donations. Again, just www.greatbasetennis.com, just a donate button, many options.
Yeah, I just think $10 is pretty fair to ask for per month, but to aspire to say, well, if we had 1,000 on a roster, okay, maybe we'd be the smallest tennis teaching organization, but not aspire to be the smallest, but aspire to be the best. Mm-hmm. And but no, I appreciate you being in on this, because certainly you lived it, and that. For the longest time, I ran a program with my name on it, Tennis Smith School. And the term tennis smith, well, okay, the goldsmith, the silversmith, the blacksmith, and the idea that, okay, a craftsman, but I dropped that because, tennis smith had too much ego in it. And Richard Hernandez, who I communicated with just today, he's the one who said to me, umpteen years ago, tennis needs a GreatBase initiative. And, Andy Fitzell would say, well, we don't need to be pigeonholed like we're only for beginners. But I would say that that's the most neglected group. It's amazing how people, they just don't want to teach beginners. Well, one, they don't know how.
They don't know how.
they have no clue. And it really, it's so easy to masquerade. So one of my brothers used to use that word all the time. They're an imposter. They can just masquerade in their profession. If you're doing some things, like if you're an accountant, I always tell accountants, you can't say, oh yeah, this is the money's in the account. This is the way it's working. But you can definitely masquerade as a tennis teacher. You can really be pretentious. Rocky 1, are you a pretender or are you a contender? But anything else, guys?
For the betterment of tennis. No.
Yeah, thanks. It's been good. I hope people got something out of it.
Yeah. Thanks for supporting the GreatBase. And Dave, thanks for your time. Listeners, thanks for listening. And another podcast in the books. We'll get back to you.
Okay, Yvonne.
Thank you.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.